All
What's
right,
up,
guys.
everybody?
So good to see you guys. My co-host Jason Vaz in the house.
In the house, in the office,
Yeah,
actually. But
in
yeah,
the office. Nice, nice. Hey guys, you guys know me, Neil D'Souza, host of Magic Mondays and the Leadership to Wealth podcast. So glad that you guys could join us today. Now we've got some. I don't know. Some people are loving it. It's scary news to others, but we got snow across the province.
it's funny. It's funny you say that because for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge football fan. I was watching my Packers decimate uh, Seattle Seahawks, and right at the end when it started getting crazy, I saw a little snow in Green Bay, and you know what? I got excited. I got excited. It was I was pretty happy about it. So
Well, the
winter
pack attack
winter
is
is here.
strong. The pack attack is strong with the snow.
Oh yeah,
They're accustomed to it over there
they
in
are.
Wisconsin. So I think they've won quite a few Super Bowls with snow on the
With snow.
ground.
Yeah.
So well, a little sooner than I would have liked. But listen, we're going to talk about real estate and investing because this is Magic Mondays and we are the Wizards of Ontario Real Estate and Investing. And our other co-host, Marlon Yeeman, will not be with us today. And
Because he's in a place with no snow.
that's right. Marlon, on behalf of Jason and I, we hate you, but we look forward to seeing you back again. In the meantime, guys, today's show, we're supposed to have a real estate lawyer on the show. Now we'll hold off on that to see if we can actually get him on because we're trying to get him on camera and we want to hear some stories. We want to get some input on what some of the worst things that he's seen when it comes to closings in real estate. And so in the meantime, Jason and I are going to start touching on that subject while our producer Wyatt's going to continue working with our lawyer friend to get him on. So Jason, let's just start off this conversation because everyone, it's really easy to go out and start looking at properties, but what people are concerned about is all of the things that really can go wrong when you're trying to close.
Well, yeah, Neil, the biggest concern I have is it's usually first time home buyers. So they go to their bank, mortgage broker, financial institution, and they get a pre approval, let's say for $900,000. What they don't realize is they think that means I can buy anything for 900. The bank will give me 900. Not exactly. These homes have to appraise at 900. And especially now in today's real estate climate, what we're seeing is people are not only paying over asking, they're going a tad over market value. So this is where we kind of run into some issues on the closing side of things. A lot of you out there that'll go to an open house and just kind of offer the highest price just because you're getting a little FOMO because all your friends have bought a house this year and you're not. You throw this crazy price. What you don't realize is, say you offer the 900, it gets accepted. In 2 months, you're going to be moving in. Well, what's going to happen is in the last couple of weeks, the bank or financial institute is going to come in with an appraiser to see, hey, what is this house really worth? And in the fine print of your pre-approval, it always says it's conditional on appraisal. So if the appraisal comes in at, say, 800, guess who has to come up with the extra $100,000? Because it ain't going to be the bank. You are. And if you don't have the funds, you're in trouble. And that's when someone like Henry goes after you.
And you said his name, and here he comes.
Ask and he shall appear.
Ladies and gentlemen, on today's show, Henry Preisman, real estate lawyer extraordinaire. Good to have you on the show, Henry.
Henry, it's a pleasure to have you.
Neil. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for coming.
Good to be with you.
We're glad we were able to get you on. We were literally just talking about we started talking about things that can go wrong in closing, and one of the first items that we just talked about was you get a pre-approval for 900,000, and then you find out, say 2 weeks before you're ready to close, that your property has appraised for 800,000, and now they're looking for. Now you have to come up with 100,000. Have you seen this, Henry?
Yeah, so this happens all the time. especially in markets where prices are changing quickly, like in rapidly rising markets. A lot of times the appraisals don't keep pace with the actual market. So you'll have a bank appraiser go in and look at comps to the house, and those comps are, a couple months old, and they're 50,000, 100,000 less than what your client or what the person's bought for, right? So the appraisal will come in at a lower amount. And the bank will say, well, we're only prepared to lend you based on that lower amount. So even though you bought for, 900,000, we think the property's only worth 850. So you have to finance the other 50 yourself. Right. And if you're planning to borrow 40 of that 50, the 80% margin, then you got to come up with another 40,000 bucks. And if you don't have it, you got a problem. Right. So you're going to relatives, you're going to friends, you're going to your credit. I don't know what you're doing. You got to come up with 40 grand, and some people don't have it.
Well, Henry, you and I have dealt with this situation a number of times. Obviously, with me specializing in private lending, where people have called up and they need those extra funds, and it comes at a cost. But let's talk about the legal side of it. What happens if someone does not have those funds? They're not able to put those funds together to be able to close.
Well, I mean, in many ways, it depends on what's going on in the market. I've seen situations, rarely, but I've seen situations where vendors have agreed to either reduce the price or take some of the money back, the balance of the purchase price in a note. I've seen, realtors step in and lend part of their commission as a credit to the buyer so that they're able to close, and then the buyer pays them back over a period of time. Of course, there's a significant possibility the deal doesn't close at all and the buyer loses the deposit and potentially gets sued. So all those things are possible. Sometimes the deal gets reworked. It's delayed, and the buyer goes to another lender and maybe gets more money from that other lender, even though it's on maybe not necessarily as good terms. A lot of things are possible, but the default is always present. If you have a default, you got a real problem. And not just the person who defaulted, but the other side also has a real problem, which is why it's often the sellers work with buyers to avoid the default because they want the money. They maybe have bought a property. They've got some plans for that money too. It's not just going to sit in the bank. So it behooves and kind of motivates everybody to work together to sort this out.
Yeah. Henry, can I quickly ask you something? Have you noticed a rise in appraisals coming in lower in the last year or so, or has it been more or less the same?
No, I would say in the last couple of years, that's definitely been a trend where the appraisals aren't coming in at the amount that is required. Like the appraisal doesn't come up to the purchase price. And I think that's partly a function of the rising market. Prices have been going up so quickly that appraisers are hesitant to assign the value to the properties that the buyers are paying. And especially when you have these bidding wars where somebody will bid like 250,000, 300,000 over asking, and that's just setting yourself up for problems because maybe you probably overpaid, but also you've probably got a financing issue. And if you're borrowing 80% loan to value and you're maxing out, which is like what everybody's doing, I don't know.
And it's interesting. It's interesting, Henry, because I'm dealing with a lot of first-time homebuyers that are in these situations, and some of them are approved for amazing amounts. And they say they want to do the responsible thing. Usually, we have a meeting with them and we say, you know what, guys? Yes, you're approved for $1 million. Why don't we shop around $9 million just to give you that $100,000 buffer? But unfortunately, so many people, like the competition's maxing themselves out, which it forces you to max yourself out. And it puts you in a unique position. There's two pieces of advice that I give people. One is set your sights lower. If you are borrowing at your max amount, the quality of life is going to be very low. You are going to be living for that mortgage, and it doesn't matter how nice the house is, you're going to hate it. If you're eating ramen noodles in a mansion, like let's go for the 3-bedroom instead. So it's interesting. Although this market, all we've heard is praises about how crazy it is. The condo side of things, a little bit damper, a little bit more easygoing. The prices are it's still very in favor of the seller. However, there are some deals that you can get in. In fact, this evening I'm going into multiples on a condo, which I think we can nab at a half decent price. The other thing is get somebody like Neil D'Souza to do a backup approval. Anticipate it. Get someone to come in there where you got some private funds on the back end that, hey, if things slip up, you've got that as a safety net. Because, Henry, you can tell it the best. These things get really ugly when you default. You're looking at 2 years, $20,000 in court fees. Like it can get really ugly.
It can get ugly. I mean, in my experience, has been the litigation is the exception rather than the rule. Most of the time, neither side wants to litigate anything because of what you said. They don't want to spend the money and take the time and go through the stress. So if a deal falls apart for good, what you often see happen is just the deposit is forfeited to the seller, and everybody kind of licks their wounds and goes away. But yeah, I mean, obviously there are cases where people sue each other, and because sometimes the losses can be quite significant, especially if the seller has also bought something and is relying on the money from their sale, which the buyer is defaulted on, right? So you have this domino effect, which a lot of people don't realize. Like it could be 3, 4, 5 deals in a row where somebody's selling to buy from someone who's selling to buy, and so on. And if you're at the beginning of the domino chain and you knock it all over, you could be on the hook for like $500,000 in losses because you're at fault, right? Yeah.
And let me jump in for a second there, Jason. I want to ask about Henry. Something that Jason was mentioning about condos versus fully detached or free. Talking about the two condos versus free homes. So freeholds. Thank you. I called them free homes. so here's the question.
They're not free. I can assure you,
they're not free. That's right. that we know. So so let me ask you, in your experience, because I know that you've seen these. Do you see this happen more on the condominium side or with freehold and can you speculate at all why you think you see it in one place versus the other?
What I can tell you is, and this is just my observation, anecdotal, right? Obviously, I haven't done a study of this, is it seems to happen more frequently on cheaper properties. Like the guy who bought the $3 million house will have his money in place at 9 a.m. that morning closing.
Yeah.
The guy who bought the $500,000 condo will be scrambling around at the last second and borrowing from Peter and Paul to get that deal done. And you won't get his mortgage financing or get his loan commitment from the bank or the instructions like the very last second. That's what I found. Like it's counterintuitive. You'd think that the more money you need, the more difficult it would be. But that's not the way it is. So when I see, and this is not uncommon anymore, $2+ million deals, I know, hey, don't have to worry about this guy. He's got his money in place. Okay. The only time that's a problem for people like that is if they're selling also. So if their sale is a problem because their buyer can't close, then you have an issue. But that's not their fault. It's the more modestly priced properties, first-time buyers, people who are going in and maybe maxing out to buy a $750,000 townhouse. Those are the people that are going to cause me problems.
Yeah.
Right. The guy buying a $3 million house with the indoor pool and whatever, he's not going to cause me any problem. He's going to have his money together. He's going to be fine.
So in other words, you're saying if Jason came to you and he was buying a house, clearly there wouldn't be any problems with him buying the house.
Right.
But
right.
If I was coming to you and trying to buy
the $10 million estate that Jason's going to buy, that's not going to be a problem. It's fine.
That's right. Well, it's interesting that we mentioned this because I literally just had a situation where a client was buying a property that they were going to be renting out, an income property, and then the bank basically came to them and said, "We're not going to be able to close on time." and it created a whole issue because now the buyer was not going to be able to close on time. All sorts of issues. The seller was not willing to budge on it at all, and now we were able to, again, we looked into the private lending. We were able to utilize other assets and be able to find a solution for them. And we had to do some wizardry there, but we were able to do that. But that's not always the case, and so it really is interesting, and because the price of the property was 500,000, and so it's really amazing that you would even pick that number out of a hat. Jason, you had something that you were going to throw out there, and I cut you off.
Yeah, no. Well, where I really see it, I do 100% agree with Henry on this one. Oh, and we just lost him. It's every time I say his name, he either appears or disappears. So anyway, one of the things that you mentioned, it is you are correct, because usually somebody who's buying a $3 million home, a little bit more financially literate, understands the ramifications of the deal, knows what they need to get together ahead of time. Like we're looking at what are we looking at? We're looking at a $3 million deal. We're looking at a minimum of $600,000 that needs to be liquid in cash and ready to go. So that makes a bit more sense to me. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of the entry level people that are doing this for the first time. They really don't know. The amount of people that I meet with, and I just having to explain to them, hey, no, you got land transfer tax on this. And in Toronto, it's doubled up, and it's not, a couple $1,000s, it's tens of thousands of dollars. You're looking at a $20,000 tax that's slapped on just to say that, hey, look, I live in Toronto. And this exists. And a lot of the times that their approvals, it just doesn't work out. So I think it's extremely important that people are sitting down and ironing out the details and the numbers ahead of time. So that's number one. Make sure you know your numbers before you even look at a house. Secondly, make sure you have a backup plan. Like I myself, when I bought my first home, I had a private lender ready to go in case things went wrong. I'm self-employed. Banks don't really like that. So it's not, don't look at it like, oh, well, I don't need that. I said, you always need it. You rather need it. You rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Because Neil can tell you from firsthand experience, somebody who's calling him that needs to close in a week is paying a hell of a lot more in lender's fees than someone who prepped it, saying, hey, just want to make sure I'm good on this end in case things go wrong. It's all about preparing yourself. Make sure you're working with the right people to get yourself going. You never want to be in a position where you're asking for extensions on closing, because that's usually what Henry can attest to it. That's usually what happens. It's not a, hey, I can't close. They ask for a 5-day extension, then another 5-day extension. They've pushed this so far. They've stacked up the legal fees. Everyone's angry at everyone. And now they're saying, hey, sorry, I can't close.
Well, so that's a great question for Henry. What do you see as the most common issue for when closing?
Well, the most common issue as far as not being able to close is, of course, money, what we've been talking about for a little while. And it's usually financing, right? People can't get their mortgage because they're probably appraised, or they can't prove income, or they've got some other issues that have cropped up during the due diligence that the lender does. So that's.
We lost him.
Oh, all right. Well, Henry, we realized that it's causing you a lot of stress there at the office. So we're going to continue on until we get you back there. But we'll keep you aside there. So
yeah, just with that, you know what? One of the other things, Neil, and you've probably seen this too. When we see a market where it's ticking up so much, and it corrects itself slightly.
Yeah.
So, for example, say you and I were looking to buy a place. They're going for 1.1, and we say, you know what? We need to beat the competition. Let's offer them 1.2 because you know what? By the time it closes, it'll be worth more.
Yeah.
But then it levels off, and it's only worth 1.15, and we're like, oh, we can afford it. We're good for it.
Yeah.
Why are we paying $50,000 more? And I think a pullback like that is imminent. I think we're going to start seeing that starting in 2022. Bank of Canada has hinted about raising the interest rates earlier than they originally said. I think this will have one of two adverse effects. One being that the buyers are now going to be squeezed to make a purchase quickly. And on the flip side is those that have made a purchase and see a level off are going to start defaulting on their deals. And I think that's something that it's going to be an interesting year. I think going into 2022 is going to be a very interesting year. I think we're all going to be very busy. We're all going to be getting shot in the head. We're going to get blamed for all of it, as we always do. When in doubt, blame your agent, guys.
Well, I can tell you that, rarely, although I might be able to save people continually, deal after deal after deal after deal, I'm not necessarily the guy that anybody likes, because we're normally saving people in dire situations, and it comes at a cost. And so, but Henry, are you back with us there?
I don't think he is.
No,
nope.
Don't think we got.
Don't say his name. We just like hey you or something, because if we say his name, he pops up. If we say it again, he disappears. We are not immune to technical difficulties, guys.
Apparently not. Apparently not.
There's no vaccine.
We'll help you navigate the real estate market and investing. We can't necessarily help you navigate the technical difficulties with the internet. Henry, are you there now?
Oh, I think.
Neil, I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi today, but I'm doing what I can.
No worries, okay, no worries, Henry.
Great. So before we lost you, you were talking about some of the more common issues around closing.
Yeah, the most common issue, as I said, is getting money, and
getting money, that is the most common issue. That's great. Okay, well, that is the reality. One of the things that I can say to what we're talking about with regards to appraisals is that having dealt with a lot of appraisers over the years, I can tell you guys that when appraisers are in there, typically they are going to give you a snapshot of the market that they see, and it kind of depends on where the market is at. If they're seeing a downward trend, then typically they're gonna base it on that. If the trend is going upward, typically they're going to base it on that, because within the time that they're doing your appraisal, there may be more properties that are selling, and they can see that the overall average market value is now higher. And so you can actually be in a situation where your property is actually worth more than what you even purchased it at. Yeah. And we definitely see that. We see that definitely on the income property side, where it may take longer to close. And so maybe you've got 3-4 months before the property closes. It's gone up in value before you even closed on the property. So there's a lot of different things. And then there's just the market forces, because there is so much pressure on the appraisers to try to get it right, that sometimes they may be a little bit above, they may be a little bit below. It's not an exact science. And so that's something to realize and to give them a little bit of leeway on, but they're going to give you a general market valuation at any point.
And one thing to add there, guys, a lot of you have been burnt by appraisers. Some of you guys have been benefiting from appraisers. But one of the things you guys need to understand is, like for example, and Neil, you can attest to this, when you're shopping for a property, agents look for market value. Now, market value is like, if a house sold yesterday, we can use that as a comp. Appraisers cannot. Appraisers can only use properties that have closed, where money has changed hands and title has been moved. So, for example, whenever I'm looking at a property, whenever we're putting an offer, we look at it two ways. We look at the market value and we get an estimate on the appraised value. So I try to get, okay, what's sold in the last week that compares to this property? That's market. What has closed more recently? That's the appraised value. If there's a large gap there, you need to think about that. If there's like a $200,000 difference there, you're going to run into some issues. Now, if the market value ones are closing before yours does, you're probably safe. If not, if you're looking at a quick closing, you gotta run those numbers properly. And that's why I say, guys, I spend probably 80% of my time running numbers, not showing properties, not putting in offers. We're just running numbers, and we make a decision very quickly ahead of time. And this is to safeguard. I'm very proud to say that none of my clients have ever been, at Henry's office saying, "Hey, I don't have the money." I've never had that happen in my entire career. Touch wood.
I'm gonna have to check
there's
in
a
my
reason.
records just to make sure that's true.
He's got to double
Fact
check.
check.
Confidently, I can
Fact
say
check
that. But the reality of it all is that the reason is that we look at the numbers, we really pick it apart, and we look at it from several different angles instead of us going in there just writing a number on a piece of paper and throwing it down, which unfortunately a lot of agents do. And
Well, I can mention something about that, Jason. When it comes to the mortgage side, one of the and Henry was attesting to this. There's some sort of hiccup in the financing, and one of the more common ones that we see, there's probably two of them. One of the more common ones is people that have not completed their taxes and have not told anyone, and then they don't realize the delays that come in there, and then there's a tax bill. And I'll let Henry touch on what happens there. But then the other one is probably the most common is someone making a major purchase in between the time of the offer and the time of closing.
Stop buying trucks.
I've seen trucks. I've seen vehicles destroy more deals than anything else. Cost people more money than anything else where they buy a liability, and that's when you find out it's a liability. They buy a vehicle and it adds on to their debt ratio, and the banks pull the offer, pull the commitment. So, but Henry, can you talk about that with regards to taxes and tax balances?
Sure. I mean, obviously, if you have an outstanding income tax bill that you haven't paid, or you haven't paid your HST if you're in business, that's going to really throw a monkey wrench into your financing, right? Banks don't like to lend to people who don't pay their taxes or have a tax liability, if for no other reason than, CRA has a priority over everybody's debt when it comes time to collect, if that time does indeed come. I would say, like, the main problem, though, I think is more fundamental, and that is that a lot of these buyers are being advised by agents who either don't know what kind of problems they may encounter or don't communicate those potential issues. Like, if you're a real estate agent and you're dealing with someone who's self-employed, right? And you don't check, or you don't ask them, like, hey, have you filed all your taxes? Have you paid all your taxes? Do you have any outstanding liabilities to CRA? Or you're on a payment plan? Like, if you don't do that, then you're potentially, like, doing your clients a real disservice, because a lot of them don't know, right? They figure, oh, I owe the CRA $10,000. Well, I'll pay them next year, right? I don't care. Well, you may not care, but your bank certainly cares. And if you haven't filed your taxes, or you haven't paid your taxes, or you're on some kind of payment plan with CRA, that is going to be extremely problematic, right? And we've all seen this, where people have to file 4 years worth of taxes all at once in order for their bank to even consider lending them money.
And CRA is not easy to file with. They'll make you do half digital, half paper files. You're looking at 6 months minimum. Yeah,
it's a problem, and it's a significant problem. And we've all seen the people who bought the trucks, or they bought, they bought a new car, or they've leased a new car. Now all of a sudden their monthly payments are a lot higher than they were when they qualified, and the bank says no, and you can't give the car back. Like, the manufacturer doesn't want the car back; they just want your money. So there's all kinds of stuff, but I think it all stems from a fundamental problem in that agents either don't know that these problems exist, don't check, or don't communicate that to their clients. I think that's a real issue.
Yeah, and I think you can see that on both sides. You can have that with realtors. You can also have that with mortgage agents as well, where if they don't have enough experience in the industry, or maybe there's issues with their own financial issues where they're looking to close that deal and they're just saying yes to it, and they're not really walking the client through what they need to be prepared for. And such as.
That's true. I call those agents the hope and prayer agents. They just sign you up and then they hope and pray that the deal closes.
That it comes together.
So they
Yeah.
collect their
Listen,
commission.
And they're telling you to waive finances with financing clause. Waive all the conditions.
Waive the financing or go in without a financing clause. Just do the deal and then we'll figure it out.
And that is terrible because agents have a fiduciary duty towards their clients. And it, like, the good thing is, I actually heard this news this morning. Humber College caught, I think, 30 soon-to-be agents cheating to get their license. Revoked all their licenses. And I think there's like 120 that are under investigation now. So they're really cracking down because there's a lot of people entering the space that they really shouldn't be. I think they need to raise the standard. I deal with them all the time. I deal with guys that are putting in offers where, yeah, their number's high, but I don't trust this person that you've done your due diligence. And if this deal doesn't come apart, I look like the idiot. You know what I mean? Because these guys are working another job. They just hold the license and they do a couple deals here and there. And you can tell, like, the emails are coming in. It's not from a company email. It's from their Gmail account. It's just little things that you pick up on, and you only find this out after you've been burnt a couple of times. It is what it is, man. It's
yeah. Henry, any parting words as we get ready to wrap up?
Well, first of all, when you go on podcasts, make sure you have a good internet connection. It doesn't betray you. So that's one thing I would recommend. The other thing I would recommend, and this is to buyers, right? To people who are looking to purchase a property, is, like anything else, you have to rely on yourself before you take advice from others. Educate yourself first, right? Before you go look at properties or before you even go online, MLS, do a little bit of self-education. Find out what your closing costs are going to be. Find out how much money you need. Find out what kind of income is required to get the kind of property that you want before you even, set foot and look at a property that you might be interested in, right? Because maybe an afternoon of studying and reading online will save you a whole ton of trouble down the line.
Yep. Great words. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Preisman of Preisman Law Office. You can get a hold of Henry if you want to hear more with regards to real estate law and closing on transactions. Jason, any parting words?
You know what? I had 100% agree with Henry on that one, that yes, buyers in this market, you need to educate yourself. We do a buyer education session where we do a Zoom meeting just like this, where we meet with our people, discuss things in full, really talk to them so they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. Because if you just jump and start looking at homes, it can be gut-wrenching. It's a tough market for buyers, especially the first-time ones. So yeah, that afternoon of research will do you wonders.
Well, guys, if you've got any more questions regarding real estate law, put them in the comments, and we'll get Henry to answer those questions for you. If you want to know about any issues around closing from a licensed agent, Jason can help you. And of course, if you want to know with regards to mortgages or private lending, again, put all those things in the comments, put them in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer those for you guys. And until next week, on behalf of Jason Vaz, my co-host, Henry Preisman, real estate lawyer extraordinaire, and myself, Neil D'Souza, this is Magic Mondays. We'll see you guys again